Welcome to the Principles of Performance podcast, where we discuss how to optimize your health, fitness, and performance. Drawing on decades of experience of working as coaches, consultants, and trainers to top performers, athletes, and teens from professional sports to top universities to the U.S. military, Eric DeGatti and Mike Perry discuss topics and strategies of how to perform at your highest level and be your very best. Join us and our friends and colleagues who are leaders in the fitness and performance industry as we investigate and challenge the most popular training, nutrition, lifestyle, and recovery protocols. And away we go. Here we are with the Principles of Performance podcast. I'm your host, Eric DeGatti, along with my friend and co-host, Mike Perry. And Mike, a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts today about keeping kids active and healthy.
Yeah, this is something that I'm in the thick of it, right? I've got a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, two boys, and I'm trying to just figure it out, man. I've got, I feel like I've got 15 balls in the air, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep them active and healthy. But it never hurts to have people that know a lot more than you do, and that's why I'm excited about learning from today's guest. Go ahead, bud. Why don't you introduce our good friend here?
All right. So we have Dr. Chris Koutouris. He got his degree in kinesiology at UCLA and then went on to obtain his medical degree from University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and spent 3 additional years in Madison for his pediatric residency, working one of the first pediatric sports medicine programs in the U.S. Now, when he got back to California, he completed a 1-year sports medicine fellowship at UC San Diego, and he's a team physician for USA Volleyball, the U.S. Figure Skating Sports Medicine Network, Cal State Fullerton Interstate Collegiate Athletics, and the Chapman University Volleyball Department. In 2008, Dr. Koutouris fulfilled his lifelong dream by serving as the medical team physician for USA Volleyball and table tennis at the 28 Beijing Summer Olympics. And he's currently a mentor for pediatric residents and medical and athletic training students and speaks at local, regional, and national conferences on sports medicine topics. And he recently completed a 6-year elected term as a member of the executive committee for the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Sports Medicine and Fitness and has authored over 25 published articles. So yes, he's somebody who knows what he's doing, and we are super excited to have you on the show, Dr. Koutouris.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to having this conversation on a very important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll dive right in. So with all of your, extensive background in high level sports, why have you chosen to make your focus on kids?
Kids are still developing. Kids are still in a point in life where we'd like to think if we can give them guidance, if we can give them a framework, we can help them develop better lifelong habits. Not saying that we as adults are done deals. No, we're always trying to evolve. But as we know, kids have more flexibility. Kids have still that inner drive to want to explore. So I just enjoy that. In fact, it was interesting. I was over with our U.S. volleyball program yesterday, talking to a few athletes, their first years overseas. And we talked more about volleyball is volleyball. Their biggest concerns were, how do you keep relationships going when you're overseas? How do you keep up cooking for yourself? All things we talk to kids about. So that development that we talk to an 8th grader, to an 11th grader, we're still talking about it with our national team folks. So I just love watching kids. They tend to get better. They tend to want to get better. And you can hopefully inspire them so that when they get to be our age, they're still active.
So one of the things that I talk about in our courses is there's this dichotomy that we have in our culture that has only gotten a wider of a divide post-pandemic, in that we basically have what I call 2 populations. We have ones that are fragile and ones that are broken. The fragile ones are the ones that have basically their movement for the day consists of getting up to get the DoorDash and then getting back to the couch. And then the broken ones are the ones that are, as adults, they're over exercising and overtraining and or doing these things, and they're breaking down and coming into your office. And unfortunately, our youth seems to mimic that same type of dichotomy, where you have kids that are either completely inactive, get no exercise whatsoever, or they're involved in this insane number of simultaneous sports and physical activities. So how do you approach these polar opposites, and can either of them be brought to a middle ground?
It's the big challenge. We love to hear about that middle ground and we strive for it. It can be tough. Yes, I've got kids who seem to be exercising more hours than I probably sleep in a day, and the parents are driving them all over the place. You got to commend them for their efforts and their dedication. But yeah, you wonder if they're being overdone. For that group, I really try to talk about balance. I try to bring up some of the studies that look at number of hours per week, risk of injury. I try to talk about the importance of multi-sport and again, the data that's coming out on that. For the kids at the other end, let's just start simple. Hey, how do you get to school? Oh, my parents dropped me off. Can they drop you off maybe a couple blocks further from school? A, they don't have to embarrass you by dropping you off and giving you a hug right in front of your friends. B, you get 2 blocks of walking. Okay, that'll work. So we try to find simple things. We try to find, hey, if you're going to be playing video games, take a 10-minute break and walk up and down the stairs. Let's do something. So I'm always trying to find ways to make it fun and try to get the parents involved. Hey, you're dropping your kid off for practice instead of sitting in the chair and criticizing the coach the whole time. Why don't you walk around the field a few times? And that gets you active and that probably gets you out of the coach's hair. So we try to be creative, but it is a definite struggle.
So you're saying we shouldn't do is just, yell at our kids and say, get off your butt and exercise. And while we eat a bag of Cheetos from the couch, you don't think that's going to work?
Oh gosh, if it did, we'd all be pretty happy. No, we've got to be examples and we've got to set that example. And if that means you're getting up a bit early or as you're getting your kid out the door to practice, you're dressed in a way to exercise, it's going to set the message. So the kids may not say anything, but they're bringing it in. They understand what's going on.
Absolutely. So, there's some scary statistics when it comes to childhood obesity. What do you see obesity? What do you think the cause is, or the symptom, or the real problem really is?
I think some of the issues are opportunities for kids. We've somewhat looked at sport, up till about age 12. There's decent recreational entry level sporting opportunities for kids. But once you get to be the end of elementary school, a lot of those opportunities go by the wayside unless you're quote unquote elite or single sport dedicated. So that's kind of a bummer. Then you throw in, we're all fairly busy people, and there's so many great options for, as you said, DoorDash, or let's stop and get fast food on the way home. So I think it's a issue with we're trying to push kids quicker and quicker to be either elite, and those that don't want to be are kind of left by the wayside. And then we're also at a point where we just kind of want to quickly eat to move on to our next thing. And I talk a lot to kids about meal prep. My son, who's now 19, is a king of this. He'll come home on a Saturday or Sunday and take over the kitchen. And he makes a heck of a mess. But at the end of this messy process, he's got food for the whole week. Kind of inspired my wife and me to think like that. So I talk to families about that. I talk to kids about, look, just because you're 12 and you're maybe not interested in baseball, there's a lot of other stuff out there. So I think part of it is we haven't fostered the right environment or supported those efforts for kids. We just aren't giving them opportunities.
So, as a follow up, when it comes to sort of modeling and trying to sort of be an example for your kids, how important and at what age does it really do kids really absorb more of what they see from a habit stand from a parental standpoint? Obviously the kids are always watching, but are there certain windows in development where kids are more tuned into the habits of their parents, or the way that their kids live their life?
I think as you get towards the end of elementary school, towards middle school, they're starting to look at their parents. I think up to that age, your parents are kind of held in this pedestal. They can do no wrong. We want to please them. Then, as you start to get a bit more cynical in middle school, you realize, hey, your parents are human beings and they do crazy, weird things, but they also do some pretty cool things. And again, I'm speaking both as a parent. I've got 3 kids now in college and having discussions with them as they reflect back. They make comments like, you guys actually, you were there for us, you were consistent. They made observations that my wife and I didn't think they were making. And it was revealing, humbling also. But I think, yeah, when you get to be about middle schools, when they're starting to take note, they're not going to say, hey, you're doing a great job, mom and dad, keep it up. But I think they're keeping score.
All right, so I want to kind of segue two of Mike's questions is talking about stats with childhood obesity and that influence of the family unit. we know, like with addiction, that your likelihood of you being having that passed on to you goes up when you have one parent who's abusing, and then exponentially goes up when you have two. Talk about things like childhood obesity and the impact that it has when they're in a family unit, that whether one or two of the parents are also obese, and where that sets them up for disaster.
It's a challenge. If you have, again, one or two parents that struggle with their weight, have obesity, you've got the genetic component. There's probably somewhat of an environmental component, either in food selection, food availability, and or exercise preference. So those are situations that's tough. You don't want to walk in a room and say, hey, you've got two strikes against you, and here comes the third pitch. But you also want to gently look at ways that you can hopefully get the whole family moving. And it starts, again, with small steps. It maybe starts talking about meal prep. I always like to talk about, what are kids doing when they're hungry in the car between activities? You're shuttling your kid, let's say, from school to a practice or to an art class. I'm hungry. Okay, you could probably pull over and stop at the convenience store. That may not be the best call, but okay, I always like to talk about trail mix or peanut butter or hard-boiled eggs if you can find them these days. Things that are relatively quick, relatively inexpensive, give you a fair amount of protein, and aren't going to be the processed foods that are going to set them up for issues down the road. So it's a lot of, again, plan ahead, being positive, and acknowledging, yes, some families have a bigger issue. We're not just going to write them off. We're going to have to get more creative.
Okay, so let's tap into the sports medicine things of side, Chris, and for these kids that are involved in high volume and competitive sports, you often have two opposite approaches with kids and their injuries, and how their parents are kind of handle that. The first, they run to the doctor every time the kid has a scrape or a bruise, and you have the other side that if they just tell them to kind of rub some dirt on it and move on. So, as a parent, how do you know when they need medical intervention, and what are some key warning signs that we should watch for with young athletes?
If I'm watching my kid on the field, I probably have a pretty good idea how they like to move, how they carry themselves. Are they playing with their usual level of aggressiveness? I mean, every kid's going to have, I don't want to go to practice today. But if you're noticing that's happening more and more, or you get to the field, they're limping, they're not as quick to start their warm up. Even probably the worst things when you get in that evil eye from other parents, like, what's wrong with your kid? They're just not themselves. So that parental intuition that something's not quite right, that there is, again, that limp, that lack of desire, they're throwing and the ball's all over the place. Uh, the other thing I look at is pain. If they're coming home and saying my arm hurts, and they can take, let's say, their finger and they go, oh, my whole arm here is hurting, that's one thing. But if they can take their fingertip and say, hey, it hurts right here, one spot, and you've got some swelling and they can't move it, and you're hearing about it the next day, that's probably something to look into. So, professional athletes can put up with, I think, more discomfort. That's part of what got them there. But when you're talking about a younger developing child, if there's a change in how they're acting and they can point with a finger and there's something different in how that joint looks, it's probably worth looking into.
All right, so if we can go a little bit deeper into the weeds here, as someone who's a baseball geek, right? That's my sport. My kids played it. That's what I still play. Is this whole thing that startles parents when I say that, about the use of ice after games, and gonna get your opinion from the sports medicine side. And taking a step back from all of it, they will always ask me, okay, well, what's the best ice pack I should use, and how soon should I ice, and how long should I ice my kid's arm? And I said, well, ice is generally something that's in response to a trauma. And as a coach, my job is to not, impart trauma into your son. And so I shouldn't put you in a situation where you necessarily need ice, number one. And so we need to take a step back. Well, why do you need this ice in the first place? Maybe you should be throwing 130 pitches at 12 years old. Two is ice even the best thing, where a lot of the research will contradict that. So kind of looking at that from both lenses.
Totally agree. I think 10, 15 years ago, it was the proper thing to do. You're done with exercise, throw an ice bag on. In fact, be watching a major league game and, oh, they're going to pull the pitcher because he's got his ice pack on. And that diffuses down to little league. Okay, I've just finished throwing. Where's my ice pack? Okay, hold on a second. Agree that the data is not compelling. You need to have ice. There are some kids, yes, they may respond to ice if they have inflammation or soreness, but a lot of kids don't. And I will often ask, while you're sitting there and icing for 20 minutes, what could you be doing? Could you be doing more of a dynamic cool down? Could you be doing some stretching? Could you be doing some arm movement? Could you be doing some whole body workout that might help you flush out some of that discomfort and probably be more productive for you in the long run? So I'm not a fan of categorically saying, here's your ice pack. You've just finished activity. Let's go. And I also agree with the statement. If you feel you need that ice pack, why? Is it because you've overdone it? Is it because you're kind of conditioned to it? So let's really dig into why you want the ice. And is it really the best next step? Is there another thing that we could do? And I'm a big fan, again, of the dynamic cool down. And I think that's more productive for kids and adults as they finish their activity.
All right. So now let's zoom out away from the athletes. Let's look at the general population. And it's scary. And I've noticed a trend working with high school teams post COVID, how it even dropped off more precipitously. Just the general physical preparedness and the resiliency, the physical resiliency of kids had, which was already on a steep decline, has just kind of fallen off a cliff. And so how much do you see the loss of adequate physical education in school, as well as recess and playtime, impacting these health challenges that we're seeing with these kids?
I think it's a significant concern. I think we don't have the framework of movement. And PE used to be taught by people with a background and training in physical education. They were given a dedicated period with dedicated equipment, and kids took it somewhat seriously. Now it seems like PE is, let's get you out there, let's roll out a few balls, let's occupy some time so we can go back and tell our stakeholders that we're having PE, period. And kids kind of roll their eyes and try to get out of it. And I've argued, ideally, PE will take every kid. I don't care what they do outside of school. If they're the couch potato, if they're the highest level athlete on the planet, can we teach them basic movement skills? We know about, for example, the high risk of anterior cruciate ligament injury, especially in our younger females as they go through puberty. Could we teach strategies to reduce knee injuries by teaching them different movement patterns, work on their single leg squat, work on their quad strength? This will benefit not just the soccer player, the volleyball player in the audience, but every other kid who's probably going to have to move, go hiking, lift things. And we work off that. We start working on maybe upper body strength. So we're looking at building just general movement patterns that are going to help our adults down the road. I would love to see that happen. And I think kids would get more value out of it. I think the instructors would love to see, hey, I'm producing value. And even the parents, whoa, I'm getting something out of my PE period. My kids are coming home. They're moving more. They're more excited about it. And there's probably less chance they're going to get hurt.
Well, if you're interested in kind of, if you're someone who's interested and passionate about this topic, as we both are, and for the people out there listening, I encourage you to get a book called JFK's Secret Doctor. Okay, and it tells the story a little bit about how PE evolved over the last 50 plus years in our society in the U.S. and where it pivoted from physical preparation, like you're talking about, teaching movement skills and so forth, to where it became sports. And part of that was when the history is it's fascinating. It talks about where John F. Kennedy created the Presidential Physical Fitness Council, and we used to do that in school. And you'd have these presidential physical fitness tests once a year. That was done to try to stem the tide. This is happening in the 60s, and we're now fast forward, 60 years later, dealing with the same issue because he was told by his medical advisors that if you don't start doing something about the fitness of our youth, you're going to have no soldiers to fight your wars, in time. And that's kind of what's happened. Now, what was interesting is when he created his council, he chose Bud Grant, the old football coach, as one of the people who kind of helped create the curriculum. It then became all biased towards sports and got to be what you see today of let's roll out the ball, and you go from one sport to the next sport to the next sport. And that physical culture that you see in other countries that is developed in their phys ed, you don't see here. And so that is one of the big drivers of it. The question is, okay, we can scream from the mountaintops, Chris, about how bad it is. What can we do about it?
Yeah, I always kind of go to the parents at this time. And, when you talk to parents about, hey, do you really want your kids to be hurt? No. Have you seen, for example, on your youth soccer team, anybody tear their ACL? Yeah, I've got 3 friends who did. All right. Did you know there are good programs, validated, scientifically based, that can be done by, I won't say lay people, but people with reasonable amount of training, and they can be done in a pretty short period of time. And if they're done 3 times a week, the data shows they can reduce the injury. They're all fired up. But their big question is, how do you integrate it? Well, if you go back to your school, could you see if this could be integrated? And I've had a few parents, mostly in the private school sector, because things happen to move a little quicker there, able to get things started. So it's a grassroots effort from us at the professional level, but also then from our stakeholders, the parents who want what's best for their kids.
So there's a couple options that I would throw in there is that yes, you can go find outside training, which is, it's what people like Mike and I have been doing for years. At the organizational level is the suggestion is that, as you said, these things could be put at the beginning of practice a couple times a week. It's not going to eat up a lot of your time. It could be part of your warm up and preparation period. It's going to eat up maybe 10, 15 minutes. And maybe instead of playing 6 or 7 games this week, why don't we play 4 or 5 and spend that extra time in development at the organizational level? Now, we've had a couple, other experts on talking about this thing specifically, like you mentioned, ACLs with females. And one of the challenges that they all can kind of congruently agreed on is one of the problems is that boys are introduced to training at an earlier age for the most part than girls are. And in girls, it's generally more reactively, Susie tore ACL on our team. We better do something, or I hurt myself and now I got to do something, as opposed to proactively with boys. And so all of them agreed, if we can get girls specifically, everybody, but girls specifically, strength training at an earlier age, we could stem a lot of this tide. And that's going to tie into the movement skills that you're talking about. But then you get the old, wives' tale of, kids shouldn't strength train. It's dangerous. Where I would argue, playing 8 games in a weekend is far more dangerous than anything we could ever do in our weight rooms. But talk about overcoming that fear of parents of where strength training is going to not stunt your growth. It's not going to be harmful. It could actually do quite the opposite.
Hear it all the time. You'll walk into the room and my 12-year-old wants to weightlift and I won't let them. Why not? It's going to stunt their growth. They're going to get too big. It's going to make them bulky. They're going to be inflexible. And I look at them and say, did you know all those statements aren't true? The biggest risk in the weight room is probably dropping something on your foot, and that's because you were probably messing around. So if you are reasonably supervised with a good program, with good technique, it's going to get the benefits. And just like you said, there's probably a greater risk in playing too many games over a short period of time. So I try to explore and get through those mindsets and try to get them to say, hey, strength training can be part of a program, but you got to give it time. You got to be patient. It's not going to show up overnight. The 12-year-old is not going to get big and bulked. They're going to probably get increased neuromuscular activation, which means they'll be stronger because their nerves and muscles communicate better. But the movement patterns you're starting as they then go through puberty will be maintained. So it's work trying to get that timing in. And ideally, it's integrated with a team. It's not, okay, Johnny's out doing a separate thing, then shows up for practice, because that's more cumulative exposure. If they could do it 3 times a week, part of the normal warm-up, everybody tends to win.
Hey, everybody, a quick break in the action here. Hope you're enjoying the show, and we appreciate you listening. We're working hard to bring you the highest quality content and best guests every single week. So if you could do us a big favor and go and like and subscribe to the show on whatever platform you get your podcasts on, it would be greatly appreciated. Be sure to listen at the end of the show also to find out more information about our courses, as well as a special discount code for all our listeners. Thanks again, and let's get back to the show.
I was just kind of going on the talk of the ACL. One of the things that really bothers me is, I've done so many return to plays at this point, I can't even tell you, but when a kid goes and sees his doctor and look, from a pecking order standpoint, like I'm just a trainer, like I'm at the bottom, right? There's physicians that know way more than I do, but when someone puts a kid on the table, torques his knee left and right and says, you're cleared. Like in my mind, that is one of the most irresponsible things you can say to a young child that wants to get back on the field is, hey, here are the keys to the car. You're good to go. When in actuality, they're not good to go. So what I struggle with is I'm sitting here saying, "Hey, look, I know you're the doctor in which that repaired you said that you're cleared, but you cannot stand on one leg." So like how do we as coaches, try to advocate for these kids when like a lot of the times the orthopedic doctors are doing a great job maybe cutting and surgically repairing, but when it comes to actually knowing what return to play and function and clearing means, they're fucking clueless, pardon my French. So like how can we as strength and conditioning coach and people that are on the front lines make this better?
Couple different ways. One is in front of the parent, in front of the athlete, make them do their movements. Because I'll have athletes say, I got cleared by XYZ. Okay, fine. Can you do a single leg squat? They're all over the map.
Yep.
Can you hop? No. Do you have to hop on the field? Yes. Do you have to squat and change directions? Yes. So if you can't do it in my office at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, what's going to happen when you're on the field in the second half and fatigued? You're going to come up with a new injury. And you look and you show the parent. And sometimes I'll make a video. Hey, I know dad can't make this appointment. Take the video and show it to them. Is this the product you want on the field? And often their chin will kind of hit the ground. They're like, no. Okay. So I will show them. This is where the deficits are. And not that I want to be the bad guy, but I really don't want you out performing like that because it's good for my business, but not for you. And then secondly, it's maybe going back to your colleagues. If you know, hey, I've got a couple surgeons I work with, they kind of respect what I do. Look, here's where your words can make my life a lot easier. You are cleared to continue progression. That's a term I use a lot. Is yes, from my standpoint, you are cleared to go work with your athletic trainer, your physical therapist, your rehab specialist to continue progression. Once you've hit these goals where you can hop without pain, you can change direction without pain, now we talk about coming back. It's collaborative. It's a continuum. It's not time on a calendar. Again, it's not as clean. It's easy to say, you're 9 months out, go for it. Sorry, that doesn't work. So it's a lot of visual stuff. But when you can show a kid, look, your technique is not good. This is only going to get you in trouble. At least it gets their attention.
Yeah, you have to play the bad guy a little bit, don't you? You have to, because like I always look at it and say, like, if they're for my child, what would be the right decision to keep my child safe? Because I think as strength and conditioning coaches and coaches in general, like safety first, right?
Yep.
And for me, that's all about that decision. Is am I making a decision that's going to put my child or my athlete in a position where they may be at greater risk? And if that's the situation, that it's probably not a good position to be in. So that's the one way we have to look at it. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Eric. Sorry, bud.
No, I just love the clear to progress line, Chris, is
Yeah.
way different than you're just cleared to play. There's a lot of gray area from when they get off your operating table to when they're actually out and ready to play. And understanding how to create an objective system for that gray area is unfortunately not something that's commonplace, but it's something that has to happen. I have a bunch of stuff going on, so I want to in my head, and then I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I want to go back to first, when we talk about the strength training piece, and a misnomer that I think a lot of people have is when it comes to us with strength and conditioning, is they'll say, okay, all right, well, I don't want my kids to strength train. I want them to just do body weight stuff. That's quote unquote safe. Okay, so now, fine, if that's what you think is safe, let's use your model, which I love, Chris, is all right, let's watch your son or daughter do a push-up and see what that looks like and how many 12-year-olds can actually do a legitimate push-up. Okay, well, that's body weight. And we just watched that. That's not something that's beneficial or safe or looks like it should, right? Okay, well, let's see them lunge. All right, well, now they're all over the place with a lunge, and that was just their body weight, right? So that's a mess. So, okay, so now we have two big body weight movements that we would include. It doesn't necessarily mean it's safer, right? So it's safer. It would be actually safer if they just stood in place and did curl a 10-pound dumbbell because it's relative to the movement. It's relative to what their capacities are. And body weight is not this panacea of safety.
Totally agree. You could have kids do body weight things and cause themselves some great damage. If they're using appropriate weight with proper technique, they're going to probably get more skill out of it. They're going to probably get more results. So it's, again, a discussion with the family. It's probably, again, the visual. Show them what the kid is doing. Sometimes show them the other kids in the gym. Look over here. That kid's just about your age. Look what he's doing. He's getting some gains. Hey, Tommy, how you feeling? I'm getting better on the field. Sometimes a little peer pressure helps the parent. Parent who's with Tommy goes, yeah, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. So It's sometimes using examples of other kids' peers, both the kid and the parent, to help make that point to a parent who's hesitant. But I agree. I want to see body weight. I want to see weighted. I want to see things done in a continuum, and I want to see progression.
Now, the other thing in terms of we talk about body weight and movement skills is because we don't have PE, that if you want to look at in terms of a checklist, we're always thinking in the box of how we see fitness, what the adults see as fitness, right? You go and you walk down the line of machines and do 3 sets of 10, or you do certain body parts certain times when there's some fundamental skills like, okay, can your son or daughter skip? Can they tumble? Can they roll? Can they get up and down from the ground smoothly? Can they balance on one leg? These are skills that normally were just acquired in the playground as part of playing hopscotch and as part of doing those sorts of things that they don't get anymore because there is no recess anymore, which I'm going to get back to in a second. And then same thing with gym class. We used to do all these types of things, but in the name of safety, you go by a lot of playgrounds that used to have jungle gyms and things to climb on and things like that. And in the name of safety, we've taken those things out. And now, because of that, kids don't know how to land. They don't know how to climb. They don't know how to jump and how to run and how to self-organize and figure out movement patterns. So, in the name of safety, we've actually made them less safe. Would you agree?
I would agree. If I think back to the playgrounds we had when I was a kid many, many years ago, yeah, I think parents today would probably burn them down. I mean, we had a crow's nest you could climb up to with a chain link climbing structure to come down. And I'm sure there were a few broken arms and I'm sure there were a few broken legs, but there are also hours and hours of play where kids were climbing and propelling themselves. And we were there for hours at a time. So, yes, things have changed to the point now. I'll talk to families when their kids are about 3, 4, 5. And they say, what should we do to start sports? Join a gymnastics class. Why? They're going to teach your kid how to tumble, how to balance, just like you said, how to hit the ground and come back up. And whatever they choose to do down the road, even if they don't join a formal sport activity, they're going to be more nimble and they're going to be able to go on a hike one day. When they slip, they're going to be able to catch themselves better before they go down. So, unfortunately, we have to go the route of a formal gymnastics paradigm, but it's a great way to teach a movement and a balance pattern. So, I want that at a young age. Ideally, we would get this by kids doing their free play activities, but we're just not as able to have that happen.
Yeah, well, I could do it out those hot metal sleds that or slides that we had where you donate the back of your hamstring skin
Yeah,
to
those
for
were pain.
those. But but I would also add martial arts to that list. And
No
martial
doubt.
arts is very gives a lot of those same attributes that you're talking about. And what's also then you also get the discipline and understanding that there is progression, that there is you need that's why the belt system was created, and that's why there is ideas of learning. If I want to achieve this, I need to do this and this first. And so there's so much that can be taken away from that, but we want to rush and put them into travel sports instead. And so here's my next question for you is I know that you talk a lot about the importance of proper sleep and nutrition, which I love. And yet here's the thing, even if both the parents and the kids are really making an effort to be healthy, it's extremely challenging when you look at the lack of good food options you have in most cafeterias, and you have these early school start times. Like, what can we do both individually as well as a community to like make it easier to get good night's sleep and good nutrition?
From a nutrition standpoint, I again kind of emphasize on the meal prep. Kids will say, I want to eat the school lunch. It's cool. I want to eat with my friends. Okay, got it. But can you bring some things to quote unquote supplement it? So instead of maybe a bag of chips, do you bring some trail mix? Do you bring a hard boiled egg? Do you have maybe a peanut butter sandwich that you can throw on the tray as well? So we'll acknowledge that kids want to eat the school lunch. We'll acknowledge that it may not always be the best overall choice, but there's things we could probably add to it that will make it of better value. And yet the kid's not embarrassed because, oh, I got my brown bag again. Here we go. From a sleep standpoint, I know in our neighborhood, the high schools do start later. They start now. I mean, I think my sons, when they were seniors, started like 9:15. I mean, gosh, by 9:15, I got half my day done. Good for them if they made the right choices and actually got to sleep at a decent hour. A lot of kids will say, "Oh, I can go to school at 9:50. I'm not going to go to bed till midnight." So some of it is reinforcing, hey, you still need that 8 to 9 hours of sleep. For the situation where the kids have to get up earlier, it's a challenge of, can we get them to bed at the right time? Talk a lot about the influence of electronics, trying not to be on their screens too late, hour before bedtime, get them off their screens. And then just as a rule, trying to emphasize, hey, that 8 to 9 hours of sleep, does that mean we got to make practices start to end earlier? So you're not finishing your practice at 9 and getting home and not in bed till 11 because you can't calm down. It is a whole societal thing, and it definitely has its challenges.
So, kind of going back to the development aspect of working with kids, a lot of kids as they go through puberty will go through some really, really big growth spurts and experience growing pains. And they kind of almost have this out of body experience because their body's growing so fast and they don't really have access and control of it. You know, is there anything that we can do as parents, athletes to help them navigate those growth spurts, those growing pains where, they're a little bit more clumsy, they're a little bit more uncoordinated? Is there anything that we can do to lessen the impact of those drastic times in growth?
I think there is. It's not popular to take a big step back. Unfortunately, when kids hit puberty is usually the time when many of them choose to either single sport specialize or maybe two sport. Maybe they want to add a higher level experience. And this might be a time to say, wait, take a step back. You're more clumsy. You're tripping just walking into my exam room. If we can take that growth phase, 6 to 9 months, and go back to basic movement patterns and work on what we call the proximal strength, the shoulders, the hips, let those areas of the body control those longer legs and arms that you now have, you're going to be better off down the road. So yeah, it's not exactly the most popular decision when, hey, all my friends are going to travel ball and they're playing a lot more games. Look, you'll thank me later. If you just took this time period and kind of reintroduced yourself to your body, got the sleep you need, worked on your proximal strength, kind of got the awkward phase out of you, you're going to be a lot happier. That would be my ideal. And every so often people actually will listen to it, but it is helpful. Otherwise, you're going to be forced to do it when you get hurt, and then you're being pulled from your activity and you've got to go and do it on the back end. Better do on the front end.
All right. So we've been talking, the whole time about the health of kids, and we would be remiss if we didn't address the other elephant in the room is that there's a huge mental health crisis going on with younger kids now. And so even though that's not our wheelhouse as coaches, as trainers, and as doctors, we're on the sports medicine side, we can't ignore that, whether it's and like we talk about the two ends of the spectrum. If you talk about the super active, high driven 18 club sport kid, there's the pressures of the parents that they're giving on them, that they're trying to professionalize 11 and 12-year-olds, and the stresses that come with that of keeping up and with everybody. And like you said, the fear of missing out, or I didn't make this team, or I got to earn my spot, or dad's, screaming from the bleachers. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the kids that are just, they're not getting sunlight, they're not getting activity, and where that can connect to depression and all these other things down the road. Like that is a huge component that, as much as it's not our thing, we have to take it into consideration. And where do we even start?
Well, you have a unique position. You get to work with these athletes a couple times a week for several weeks on end. You're going to have a lot of conversations. You're going to be able to start to know their personalities. From my end, I get to see them for a limited period of time, maybe once a month. And so when I talk to my colleagues who are seeing the athletes, say, when you start to pick up something's off, and it could be obvious, the kid comes in, is totally disengaged, doesn't want to be there, doesn't react as well to coaching, something's up. Or their performance starts to lag. Or you start to have the casual, hey, how's school? Okay, well, what's going on? Or how's things going with your sport? You have those conversations, and most of the time, nothing comes up. But when you start to pick up those red flags, have a system in place. And that could be, hey, I know somebody who I've worked with, I trust. Can I connect you? Who's your regular doctor? Can I give them a shout? Can you pull the parent aside and say, look, I have some concerns, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'd rather act upon them. I've built some trust with your child. I want to make sure we're doing everything we can. And sometimes you front load those discussions. Hey, when I'm working with your kid, I'm checking in on how they're doing on the field. I'm checking in with school. And if I pick up something, it is my job. It is my duty to help them out. So I try to bring those things up in my office. That these are regular things we talk about. But I will get calls from my colleagues in the field. And I'm always happy when I get the call, not that the kid's struggling, but that somebody's taking the time to connect with them and taking the time to advocate. So it is part of the role. It's not always the easiest part. It can be downright scary at times. But I think if the kids know you've got their back, they're going to be more apt to share what's going on.
So are there any resources or anything that you recommend for maybe younger strength and conditioning coaches or personal trainers that are working with kids that maybe haven't had a lot of experience, just educating themselves on, the world of mental health? I'm not saying they have to go out and be clinicians, but are there any resources or directions or books or, what would you suggest for people just wanting to learn a little bit more about that topic and that subject?
I would probably direct them. The American Academy of Pediatrics has some good literature on mental health, on signs and symptoms, things that if you're working with kids will come up. Now, the obvious ones, the kid who comes in and says, I'm depressed, I'm feeling anxious, that's pretty rare. It's the softer things, like the kid who's more irritable, the kid who's just not paying attention the same way, the kid who's not responding to your coaching cues, the kid who's showing up late. Again, it could be just a 12-year-old being a 12-year-old, but every so often, if you just ask them what's going on, and then remember, the key thing is safety. If they ever express, I don't feel safe at home, I don't feel safe on the field, somebody's yelling at me all the time, that's where you want to start to act upon it. So talking to the kid, looking for those softer cues, and then having your backup, having somebody you could call and say, hey, look, I got my concerns. How can we work together to help this kid out?
All right. So, well, Doc, I mean, we could pick your brain on this topic all day, but unfortunately, we're sort of coming to an end. Tell us what you have coming up in the future and, what we can look forward to.
Well, I've got 3 kids in college, a little more free time on my hands. I'm actually sitting looking out the window towards the Honda Center here in Anaheim, where volleyball will be at the Olympic Games in just over 3 years. So very privileged to be able to still work with USA Volleyball, which trains in Anaheim, California, and eventually going to be doing the Olympic Games in Anaheim. So that's a pretty exciting thing. Just continuing to grow with my practice and continuing to hopefully serve people, and at the same time, trying to keep my daily workouts in, trying to keep up with my wife, who is a pretty active athlete, and even at our middle-age capabilities, just trying to be good examples. That's what we're here for.
Love it. And I appreciate all your work and your passion for this. And it's something that is desperately needed in our society. And it is a uphill battle. So we need all the soldiers we can get. And I certainly appreciate your time, Dr. Koutouris.
Well, I think with the tour you were doing, trying to collaborate this is a team sport. When you're in the sports medicine world, it's the ultimate in collaborative care. Nobody can do this by themselves. If they think they can, they're wrong. So the more that we can get together and share ideas and, again, advocate for our families, we're doing the right thing.
Love it. Well, can't thank you enough again. And we want to thank you all for listening. And this has been the Principles of Performance Podcast. Thank you for listening to the Principles of Performance Podcast. If you've enjoyed our content, please like and share on your social media outlets, as well as subscribe and give us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your preferred platform is to listen to. For more information on the Principles of Program Design courses and workshops, visit us at www.principlesofprogramdesign.com and follow us on all of the social media channels where we post new content every day. To save 10% on any PPD courses, enter the discount code PRINCIPLESPODCAST10 at checkout. If you have any questions we can answer or suggestions for the show, you can email us at info@principlesofprogramdesign.com or message us on social media. Thank you again for your support.